James Weldon is the new coach of the women's national basketball team. James, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Eoin.
Congratulations.
Thanks a million, yeah. Delighted.
Is this considered a good time to be taking the job, a safer time to be taking the job than in previous years, or how are you playing it?
I think it's a good time, you know. 2 years ago, the under-18s picked up a silver medal in the B European Championships, which was held here. So you have a lot of those players that will probably be stepping up to the level, you know, over the next 2 years as well. Like, so it's a nice time to be involved, you know. And
you've obviously been involved with plenty of the teams at Super League level, at international underage level and things like that down through the years. When you look around at the resources at your disposal now for the next 2 years, I think it is a 2-year deal that you're in. What's your hope, what's your aim with the national team?
Well, I suppose our hope is to kind of get back up on the podium for the FIBA Small Nations Championship in 2020. The previous tournament, or the past tournament, was just in Cork this past summer, where the team finished 6th. So we'd like to improve on that. Before that, they picked up a silver medal, you know, but there was kind of an influx of what we would say mid-tier teams that from the top level that came down,
right,
to C level or to small countries level, and you know, it was a much tougher challenge in Cork this past summer. Like, you know, you had teams like Denmark and Norway, Luxembourg, you know, teams that Luxembourg played in the A Championships, you know, 2 years before that, like, you know, so it's a tougher landscape now, you know, but you know, I think we're up for the challenge too.
For sure, because Ireland would have a fairly good history in the Small Countries Championship. I think they got to the first 3 or 4 finals, and I don't think they've ever won it, but they've got plenty of silver medals.
In the women's, yes, I think we've won one in the men's, yeah, in the past, and also under 18 level we've won it once as well in the women's. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's probably, you know, before the team went back two tournaments before, it was 7 years we didn't have an international team due to financial issues, you know. Thankfully, you know, Bernard O'Byrne and his staff have done a fantastic job of rectifying that, you know, so we're back in a position where we can challenge, you know, and I'd really love to see us back up in the top tier, you know, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely. Talk to us a little bit about that. So 2010, height of the recession, Basketball Ireland, unfortunately due to a terrible financial situation, have to pull funding for pull the teams, the men and the women's national teams. If you were told in 2010 that in 2018 you'd be a head coach of the women's national team, would you believe that, or did you really think at the time that it was just going to be a temporary hiatus from the national game?
I probably at the time, you know, initially when they withdrew the teams, there was kind of I suppose a lot of disappointment around the country, because the women's team was going quite well at the time. You know, they were just on the verge of actually qualifying for the actual FIBA Eurobasket A division, and you know, it was really disappointing because a lot of those players were at their peak, you know. I was hoping it would only be a short term, but it ended up being 7 years. But you know, it for me, I'm delighted to be involved. I've been involved with teams for the last 18 years as an assistant coach, or you know, the under 18s and different teams at different levels. You know, it was always an ambition of mine to try and to get the senior job, like, you know.
How do you view your situation in terms of resources then? Because obviously things, I'd imagine, like every other industry in Ireland, are slowly trickling back to some sort of sense of pre-crash normalcy.
Yeah, well, I think it's resourcefulness over resources. Like, you know, I mean, in every sport, you look at the ladies hockey this year, you know, the performance comes before you get the money, unfortunately. Yeah. So you have to prove you're worth investing in. So that's a challenge for us, like, you know, but, you know, there's a lot of goodwill out there as well. And, you know, like, I've already, even though I'm not officially in the role, like, I've 1 or 2 people interested in, you know, coming on board sponsorship wise.
That's right.
You know, like, and we're still looking for others, but it's you know, you're just trying to do the best you can for the players, like, you know, because it is a self-funding program, unfortunately, and you know, the same with the underage teams. You know, so there is a lot of fundraising to be done by players, etc. So, you know, it's added pressure on the players, but you know, they have a serious love for the game that do it, you know.
For sure, and that funding process will become easier if they're more prominent figures around localities in Ireland, and certainly we've had Kieran Donaghy on the show plenty of times over the last couple of years talking about the mini renaissance that's going on down in Kerry that seems to be harking back a small bit to the glory days of Irish basketball. Do you think that we'll get there eventually over the next decade or so, that popularity will keep on trundling on?
I think so, like, you know, I mean, like, so Mary Maguire is doing a fantastic job, you know, just promoting the game and getting out and streaming the game, and you know, yeah, definitely, like, you know, down in Killarney as well, they have a Division 1 team, and they're getting 700 or 800 people to Division 1 games, you know, on a Saturday night. It's great family entertainment. Obviously, Kieran is a colossus, like, you know, I mean, he's a living legend, you know, to just what he's done in Tralee is remarkable, like, you know, and, you know, I think that's slowly picking up around the country as well, you know, like, and you're getting, like, the league has expanded in both the men's and women's over the last number of years. I couldn't tell you exactly how many teams has jumped up, but, you know, like, this year alone you have 3 men's teams in Limerick, you know, so it's growing at a kind of a rapid pace. There's great work being done underage in the schools and clubs, you know. It's probably the highest participation sport, indoor sport in the country, you know, and obviously it's a great crossover for the GAA and for other games as well, like, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Let's chat about that, because I'd say most people nationally would have got to know your name a small bit when it was announced last year that you were going to go in and work with Eamon Fitzmaurice in the Kerry team. I think you did 1 year with him. You just came in around this time last year.
Yeah, it was around this time last year I was brought in, you know, so yeah, look, I mean, obviously Dublin, you know, have a huge influence with J.O. and Mark Ingle as well was in with them, but just had a chat with Eamon and you know, talked about coming on board, and, you know, thoroughly enjoyed last season. Obviously enjoyed the process, maybe not the outcome, like, you know, but I think you know, I learned an awful lot. You know, you're inside there, you're with, you know, an All-Ireland winning manager, you're with, you know, Mikey Sheehy, 8 All-Ireland medals, Maurice Fitz, Liam, all those guys. Like, you can't but learn yourself from that experience, like, you know. Obviously, like you said, there's a major influence on the basketball side of it and the football at the moment, like, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on that, you know, you can kind of spot, you know, when you're watching games, that, you know, be it screening, you know, be it whatever. So I think, you know, maybe Eamon decided to maybe just get a different look on things, you know, from my side of it, from the basketball point of view, and I thought we worked quite well together for the vast majority of it. You know, he's a great open-minded guy. I learned an awful lot about how to communicate and deal with players, and, you know, just the vastness of it too. Like, you know, when you're a basketball coach, you're dealing with 12 to 15 players maximum, but, you know, you're up to 40 players plus support staff. It's just mind-boggling how he manages all that, and you know, held down a full-time job as well, like, you know, so. Yeah,
definitely. What was your exact role? What were you doing on a nightly basis in training?
Well, like, practice, it would be a lot of just observing a lot, obviously, you know, and at certain times then Eamon would bring me in to do certain aspects of, you know, say it be on screening or whatever it was, like, you know, but, like, you know, I maybe once a week I would hop an email off of him, and just with a couple of ideas. He didn't take everything on board, but he, in fairness to him, he acknowledged everything and listened to everything and thought it through, like, you know.
What sort of ideas?
That was lots of things. Yeah. Some good, some bad, you know. Obviously they all didn't work at the end, but, you know, I know, I mean, look, it was just like I said, it was a different way of kind of maybe looking at things, you know.
Because, like, I'm interested, are you suggesting to him, I believe we should be setting up in a certain structure defensively, offensively with the ball, we should be setting up in a certain structure, because that seems to be the suggestion with Dublin and Mark Ingle, that really it's about their positions and how they move in a fluid way, and their ball handling is actually a very secondary thing. It's all about positioning. Is that the sort of communication you were having with Eamon?
Sometimes, like, you know, I mean, you know, like, I mean, it was just, you know, just how he viewed the stats and stuff some of the times, like, as well, you know, but, you know, like, I mean, I'm not kind of stupid enough to walk in or to Jim Gavin or an Eamon Fitzmaurice and tell him how to coach football, like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the guy has won he 6 Munster titles in a row. You know, he's won 2 Hogan Cups in All Ireland, like National League. You know, I mean, you know, so like I think it was just to get a different perspective a lot of the time, like, you know, and you know, just I think that's just probably a sign of how good a coach he was, that he was just looking for that tiny little inch, you know, that may get him over the line. And you know, obviously it ended up being a disappointment at the end of this year, but you know, they were very close to Dublin the year before, and Mayo, you know, the replay, but you know, it was a point, and it, you know, in the drawing game, it could have went either way, like, you know. So
yeah. It seemed to me that the Tyrone All Ireland semi-final that when Dublin hammered them last year in 2017 was a seminal moment for the way we talk about the relationship between basketball and GAA. When you were watching that game on that occasion, because Mark Ingle has been credited with a lot of how Dublin set up that day, what were you seeing on that afternoon?
Well, just the way they attacked, like, you know, I think there's a lot being made too about, you know, just creating the space and just the kind of the screening action as well, like, you know, guys coming on the loop. I think the term they use in GAA quite a lot, like, you know, like, and to the letter of the law, like, what they're doing is actually technically a third man tackle, like, you know. I mean, in basketball,
pick and roll.
Yeah, but it's actually illegal in basketball because the guy is actually moving, you know.
Yeah, it's not a static screen.
Yeah, it's even harder to defend, like, you know. So, like, you know, you could see a lot of that action. You know, just guys, you know, making the runs to create the space behind them, you know, and guys coming running from deep. But, like, you know, but I think, you know, systems are great. Like, you know, I mean, did a course with FIBA basketball for 3 years. Like, it was like a master's course. And, you know, one of the coaches said, like, you know, that Pesic, you know, he coaches Barcelona now in the EuroLeague, like, you know. And he said, like, you know, tactics for one game. He said technique is for life, you know.
Yeah.
So like, you know, like, this Dublin team is exceptional. Like, you know, exceptional athletes, exceptional players. You know, the tactics will vary, and Dublin have evolved every year. Like, and you know, that's probably what kind of sets them apart a little bit at the moment, like, you know.
For sure, but at the same time, you take a team of great players and you give them a set of great tactics and a set of great coaching, and you end up with 4 All-Irelands in a row. There's definitely different factors coming from here and there. I don't dispute that they're a brilliant team. I do, though, get the sense that it was a watershed moment, that it is the start of something like Fitzmaurice bringing you in, that potentially Peter Keane will bring in a coach, someone like yourself down below over the next couple of years, and other counties are going to follow suit. And as I mentioned there, like, the previous way we used to speak about the relationship between basketball and football was like, a way to keep yourself fit and ball handling. And really, that's not the real kind of goal at the end of the tunnel here. Like, the real nub of the issue is actually how you manage to implement that in terms of your team movement. So there's definitely a future here between the two sports. And you do wonder if players from a very young age are actually involved in setting up on a court, at five-a-side sport of any occasion, of any description really, but that movement where that's so much more prominent will actually help them so much when it comes to playing a 15-a-side game.
Well, I think you've an excellent point there, because I think, you know, basketball is all about spacing and timing, you know, so making your move at the right time, you know, creating space, you know, cutting at the right time, you know, the off the ball movement, like, you know, I mean, you know, watching Dublin in the flesh, in the league game, in the second half, like, Dublin full forward ran up the back of one of our centre backs and just nailed him on the screen, like, you know, and the ball was lobbed in over the top. Now, it didn't come off, but you could see, like, there was an opening there, like, you know, just the execution and the pass wasn't on. So like, you know, that's off the ball. You talked about pick and roll. That's off the ball screening. Now, you look at the new rules now, you know, with the mark inside the 21, you know, now you'll have that kind of scenario probably where, you know, they're doing that kind of off the ball screening, like, you know. And that's another thing that, you know, I think Paul Ganey, you know, referenced it recently, you know, about basketball referees, like in basketball you have 3 referees for 5 players in a very confined space. You know, in Gaelic we have 15 aside, huge space, you know, referees don't listen, what the hell's going on down
and they
here?
still get a few wrong on basketball.
Sorry?
And they still get a few wrong on basketball.
Oh, they do, like, you know, and I mean, this is the point, like, you know, so I don't know, like, I mean, like is it really a problem if, you know, I'm saying, do we empower the linesmen with whistles as well?
Yeah.
And, you know, is it really a problem if they mess up a sideline because they're not running the line? You know, I mean, if it's one line ball, whereas, you know, some fella gets taken out of it down the other end or whatever, you know, because in basketball they're watching zones, you know, they're watching the areas, that's their area, what comes into there, you know, so a lot of times they're not even watching the ball per se, like, you know, you know, so I don't know, like, I mean, I can see, like you said, I can see more of a basketball influence coming into it, you know, and it could be as simple things like going as you know, like we've a basic principle man-to-man defence that, you know, in football a lot of the time guys kind of face guard their man, you know, they follow their man no matter where he goes. So my man could be running back towards his own goal. He's not a threat. I'm a defender, you know, so like simple rule of see the man, see the ball, you know. So that's just playing with your head up even when you don't have the ball, like, you know, and just having that kind of understanding, like, you know.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of specific examples is Stephen Cluxton's kickouts, because obviously the way he executes them are absolutely fantastic, and obviously whenever he goes long and manages to ping a high one just beautifully into the chest or just above the head of Brian Fenton, we can all tell that that's just beautiful execution and beautiful skills from both the goalkeeper and the midfielder. It's the shorter kickouts, it's the mid-range kickouts that are very interesting, and it's the movement, especially if you go to any of the Dublin games, you watch the full-back line just bringing their man out and doing a loop around. As a basketball coach, what are you watching there from Stephen Cluxton and from the six backs or more who are actually moving and swindling around in front of him?
Well, like, the funny thing about it, like, I heard goalkeeper being referenced to, you know, they talk about a point guard, you know, the Colin Cooper type role, Kieran Kilkenny or whatever. Like, but the goalkeeper is like a quarterback in American football. Like, it's a set play, you know, like, so like you can have a lot of movement, you can have a lot of action. A lot of teams are zoning now, you know, so like, you know, like they go 3-3, you know, or, you know, maybe a more aggressive zone where it's 4-4, you know, blocks. So like, you know, it is very much about, in that kind of scenario, you can create those kind of decoy runs, like, you know, you can, you know, like, bring a lot of guys clustering together and just have a specific. But like Stephen Cluxton, okay, Rory Bregan is challenging the mantle at the moment, like, you know, but he's just exceptional too what he does, like, you know, like, I mean, and he rarely gets fizzled, like, you know, I mean, you know, he messes one up, but it's, you know, next play with him, like, he's, you know, he's a bit of a machine, really, you know.
Yeah, for sure. The last thing I wanted to chat to you about is the idea of cross-pollination in sport, because obviously we've spoken about it there in terms of coaching, but in terms of a player's point of view, like, you think about the national women's team that you're taking over now, and one of the great players that we've seen over the last few years has been Lindsay Peat, who played a bit of everything. Do you think that she was benefited by the fact that she played everything, that her rugby career was benefited by the fact that she was a top-class basketballer and a top-class Gaelic footballer? And do you think that perhaps in the men's game we should be actually reading into this a little bit more, because it does happen more in women's sport, I find? Well,
you look, I think the rugby team was named this morning for the USA game, and there's actually 3 basketball players in the starting 15 this weekend, Aoife McDermott and Lauren Delaney as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's a huge case for it, like, you know, Louise Galvin with the Sevens as well, like, you know, and she played Gaelic football with Kerry too, like, you know, so I think it's massive, like, I mean, you know, like, Kieran Donny is a freak of nature, you know, he's a classist, like, you know, but, you know, for somebody so big, you know, like, he's vision, he's control, and it's basketball, like, from you go in there coaching 5-year-olds, you know, the first thing they're taught, dribble with your head up, see the floor, see what's going on. You referenced the kind of positioning and spacing, you know, like, all those things are taught at a very pretty early age, like, you know, and I'd be encouraging people to play as much sport, as many sports as they can, encouraging parents to, you know, like, when I was a young guy myself, I played 3-4 sports, like, you know, and, you know, it's just a great eye-opener, like, you know. And
you do wonder if young lads are being asked to specialise a little bit too young, and the idea of elitism, development squads, obviously they've worked very well down in your neck of the woods, but in terms of those development squads, in terms of people having to pick a sport so early in life, if that's actually hampering their future development as an elite sports person.
Yeah, there's a debate there at the moment, I guess, about it. But I would say play as much as you can for as long as you can. Like like you said, the sports complement each other. And it can become too serious, too intense. It's got to be about fun as well. One of the biggest things we will try and do with the senior national team is to try and create that club environment with a national team in a short space of time, because they have to enjoy what they're doing. Like I said, we didn't get the result we wanted with Kerry, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time with the group, and the camaraderie of it, and the process of doing it.
Yeah, for sure. It certainly seems that way, and it certainly seems that you've got a lot out of it as well. James, it's been great to catch up. Best of luck with the new role, and we wish you all the success for the future.
Thanks very much, Eoin.